Hello, and welcome to Helping Other People Excel, or HOPE as I call it. And we're happy to come into your homes again this week for a half an hour, spend a little time with you, and hopefully bring you some hope and some encouragement and help you excel. So, before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First of all, I'd like to thank WCETV for WCET-TV for having us on the air and putting us on the air, doing all the technical stuff behind the scenes that needs to be done. JB and Faith and everybody back there that make this magic happen. So I want to thank them for all their hard work. And then Pastor Gary Myers and Heaven is Our Home Ministry. He was the one that was influential in helping me get started in this little project and giving me encouragement to come to you and bring you this message every week. So aside from that, we have Pamper Me Naturally is a nice line of skincare products designed to help you pamper your skin naturally. She likes to say, if your skin could talk, it would say, pamper me naturally. And so she has a nice line of hand soaps, body soaps, bath salts, skincare lotion, lip balms, wonderful healing salve that really helps with cuts and scratches and bug bites and so on, and also essential oils. And then in addition to that, we have Perry's Place in Cedar Springs, and they have all of the Pamper Me Naturally products there. In addition to, they have some fine quality herbs and teas, massage therapy, and energy work, various things for your good health. So stop in and see Perry up there in Cedar Springs, 90 North Main, and tell him I sent you, and I'm sure he'll take good care of you and help you with your health issues. So last week we covered the recipe for success, and we talked about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book, and there was a great poem in that book that I remembered and memorized years ago. It said, "I bargained with life for a penny, and life gave me nothing more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer, it'll give you what you ask. But once you've made the contract, then you must bear the task. I bargained with life for a penny, only to learn dismayed that whatever wage I would have asked of life, life would have willingly paid." And so we talked about last week, as far as that went, that we can bargain for whatever we want in life, whatever it is that we want to have, however we want to live. If you want to live the life you've always wanted, that's part of what I've been trying to get across to you folks here and help you with. And if we just bargain with that, so many times we've done the do, learn, and define process. I know I was involved in that heavy when I was a young man. I got into high school, or finishing high school, and I was called in by the guidance counselor, and she said, "Well, Jim, what is it you'd like to do with your life?" Well, shoot, I'm just a high school kid. I have no idea what I wanted to do with my life at that point. And I did kind of like electronics, and so I said, well, I think I'd like to work in electronics. And so we had the do, I'll go here. I probably should make that bigger so you guys can see it. So we have do, and then learn, and then define. All my hen scratching there. So they said, what do you want to do with your life, Jim? And so I said, well, I really don't know. But because of the electronics aptitude that I had, and I took some math in school, then, they said, well, electronics would probably be a good project for you. And so I went to school. I went to electronics school to learn how to do that kind of thing. And so then as I learned that, eventually I went out and got a job in that career. And that job defined my lifestyle. I lived the way that job provided for me. If I got paid every 2 weeks, I went to the grocery store every 2 weeks. If I, got a car that was one that would fit within my means or budget, and so then I would drive that type of car. And then, of course, later on, when you go to get a house, you get a house that you can finance at that amount of money. And so that process is what most of us have gone through, and most of us still are going through. That's how they teach us when we go to school. Our public education system teaches us these methods. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, and many people get along with that and do just fine and are happy with that. But some of us aren't quite happy with that. We know that there must be something more to life. We just don't know how or what to do to get there. And so when I first saw some of these concepts, I was totally stunned and surprised because nobody back in high school day had told me anything about this next process that we're going to discuss. And what I found out is that we did that all backwards. What we should do is we should start over here, and we should define first how we want to live our lives. What is it that we want out of life? Do we want to live in a small town or community and maybe have a little hobby farm and work in a factory somewhere? Or maybe we'd prefer to live somewhere a little nicer, maybe in a warmer climate, and have things a little nicer, maybe have a couple of cars. Or maybe we'd like to have multiple homes in multiple locations so that we can spend the colder times of the year in warmer climate, and then the warmer times of the year back up here in this fine Michigan season. So anyway, we defined what we do. That's how the wealthy people think. They think differently than we do. And they define what they want first, then they go out and they learn from somebody that's doing the same thing or similar things, and then they do what they did and accomplish those goals, and therefore they get to live the life they've always wanted. Now, I don't know if you're like me or not, but somewhere along the line I pondered and said, I've been working hard, I've got good grades, pretty good most of the time. I went to school, I learned, got a good job, spent time being timely and getting to work on time and everything else and working hard at those jobs. But it just didn't seem like it was enough to me. And I looked at other men and I thought, well, how in the world does that guy have a house on Lake Michigan? He's not any smarter than I am. He hasn't got any more hours in a day than I've got. We've all got the same. We've all got 24 hours of a day, which incidentally is probably our most valuable asset, is our time. And yet we frivolously waste it so oftentimes. We spend a lot of time watching television, and you might say, well, that's how I relax and unwind. But is it getting you anywhere? Is it going to help with your life? Or is it just a waste of your most valuable and most precious asset? Because we've only got so many hours in a day, so much time. None of us are guaranteed what we do have. We don't have any guarantee of tomorrow. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow, if we're going to be here or if we're going to be gone. I lost my father back in December, and he was getting up in age, and it was not really a big surprise that he left us, but still, nonetheless, it was his time, and when it's your time, it's your time. Sometimes it's a young child that dies in a horrible automobile accident or something like that. We just really don't know. And somebody asked me at one point, they said, Jim, if you only had 24 hours to live, or let's say you had a week to live, if I offered you money to come and clean my deck, would you be willing to do that for, say, maybe $20 an hour? Heck no. I want to go spend my last week with my family and doing some things I always wanted to do instead of, cleaning somebody's deck. But, if you're not working for your own dreams, you're going to be working for somebody else's dreams. We're just putting this into a little bit different perspective, and we're saying, okay, you've only got limited amount of time. You really only have X amount. It may be a week. We don't know. It might be 2 weeks, it might be 10 weeks, it might be 10 years. It might be another 50 years maybe. Who knows? I don't know how old you are, but but the fact is that we've only got so much time. So what is an hour of your time worth? Would you come and clean my deck for $50 an hour? If you only had a week to live, how about maybe $100 an hour or maybe $1,000 an hour? What is your time worth? I don't think I'd want it for any amount of time. I couldn't, money. I wouldn't part with my time if I only had a week to live or a day to live. Because I've only got this much left and I want to do what I need to do during that amount of time. I don't want to clean somebody's deck. Well, I don't want to clean somebody's deck now. I don't even like cleaning my own deck. But so we need to define, learn, and do our jobs in the future. We need to figure out what it is we want to do with our life. We want to figure out how our life will be, how it will look. What do we want out of life? Define that first. And then we go and learn from other people that have done the same thing. And then we do what they did. And then we get to live the life we've always wanted. And you know, there's a great book writer, and his name is Robert Kiyosaki. And he's got a book called The Cash Flow Quadrant, amongst other books, and all of them are very good. I highly recommend his reading. And incidentally, you can purchase some of his books and many other good books at the following URL address that you'll see listed on your screen here. JB so nicely provided for us. And you can go there and hit the shop section and find a lot of these books. We aren't trying to make money off them. We just want to make them available to people. And so you'll find them there at a very competitive pricing. But at any rate, Robert Kiyosaki had this to say in his cash flow quadrant. He said that in our world today, there are 4 ways of making money. So he drew this out, a little quadrant. He said in the first one is the employee quadrant. The second one is the self-employed. Yep, I did that backwards. Look at that. Told you I couldn't write right-handed. Self-employed. And then the third one is a B-type business. And the fourth one is an investor. And as an investor, you have to have money to make money. And so many of us do not have. I know that's not where I started out. I didn't have money to make any money. And that's the good news about this, is that it doesn't take money to make money. It only takes money to make money in the investor quadrant. Okay, so we're not really going to talk about that too much. But most of us over here are either in the employee quadrant or in the self-employed quadrant. And that's where most of us were. That's where I was. I started out as an employee after I got out of high school, and I was trying to, figure out what kind of job I wanted and what it is that I could do and wanted to do. And so I went and over here on this side of the quadrant, we have this little teeter-totter wherein we trade time for money. And so if you want more time, what do you got to give up? You got to give up money. And if you want more money, you got to give up time. And so we're all on this teeter-totter over here on this side of the quadrant. And eventually, after working as an employee for a while, I decided that maybe I'd like to be self-employed. And so I ran out and said, I can do everything that I've been doing plus and do this myself, and I'll have a little bit more money, I thought. But what actually happens over here is that we trade time squared for money, sometimes squared, but usually not really. But it is more money than what you get up there as the employee. But you wind up spending a lot more time doing that because you just don't have the time to do all the stuff that needs to be done in a small business. And you're trying to do it yourself and don't want to have to pay too many people because there's just not enough money. Every money you pay out is that much more money that you're not going to get to keep. So, but Robert Kiyosaki said that over on this side of the quadrant, there is 95% of the people. So most of us fall into this half of the quadrant. But interestingly enough, he said there's only 5% of the money. Well, that kind of stinks. Have you ever felt like that? Do you feel like that maybe you're fighting at your job for a 5% sliver of all the money that's out there, and it's dog eat dog? We've all said that. And of course, come hump day, you're just barely over the hump, and you're just trying to get down the other side of the hill by payday, and so to get your little slice of that 5%. But if that's true, over here is 95% of the people and 5% of the money, then that means over here then is 5% of the people. 5 and 95 makes 100. Just have to check, make sure my math is correct. And that means that there's 95% of the money. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I'd rather be on that side of the quadrant. I'd rather be over here where there's 5% of the people splitting up 95% of the pie or the money than I would be over here where there's 95% of the people fighting over that 5%. So, I really tried to learn from Robert Kiyosaki in that. And, of course, I read the whole entire book, which was absolutely amazing. Again, I really encourage you to get that book and read it as much as you can. maybe several times. Even Robert Kiyosaki says once is probably not going to be enough to read this book. But anyway, I just didn't know how to get over there. I didn't know there was an over here. I didn't know that there was another half of the quadrant. Nobody told me when I was getting out of high school, when I was at the define, learn, and do process, nobody told me that I could be over here. All they told me was, this is your option. You're going to be an employee. And as an employee, you're only going to get X amount of money, and you're going to trade your time for money on the big teeter-totter over here. And so, you know, I didn't realize there was anything else. As I began to work, I started seeing signs of this quadrant, but I didn't have any idea about these quadrants over here, really. Oh, yeah, I knew Warren Buffett probably was a good investor, and he had lots of money, and he made lots of money from his money. But it's this B-type quadrant over here that I really want to focus on. And as I sat there and thought about things, I said to myself, what is it that these guys do over here that makes them so wealthy? Bill Gates started out poor. He didn't come from a wealthy family. He was a working man. He started out doing what he did out of his garage, you know. And Steve Jobs built computers in his garage. And Mark Zuckerberg basically founded the basic foundings and workings of Facebook while he was in his college dorms and going to school. And so what is it that those guys did over there that I wasn't doing over here? It wasn't money, it wasn't time, and it certainly wasn't intelligence. I was a pretty smart guy. I did good in school. I had this aptitude for electronics. I have a aptitude for a lot of things. I've really been blessed by my Creator, by the ability to look at things and be able to figure out sometimes how they work and stuff, and that helps me fix things that other people sometimes can't. But what I figured out was that these guys over here on this side of the quadrant have information that I don't have. They know something that I didn't know. And what it was, obviously I didn't know. And you know, you think if I went down and talked to Bill Gates and said, hey Bill, how did you do this? What was your process? What were you thinking? He's not going to tell me because now I'm his competition. But Robert Kiyosaki kind of broke that mold. He kind of broke that barrier and said, you know what? I want people to understand, because Robert Kiyosaki, as a young man, as he grew up, he had what he called rich dad, poor dad. His real father was a working man, a college professor, and highly educated, had several college degrees. And but he went to school with a young man, and they kind of got to be friends and buddies. And his dad was independently wealthy, made really good money, kind of, I wouldn't say Bill Gates rich, but you know, he had a lot of money and he did really well for himself. And what Robert Kiyosaki saw was that the wealthy man didn't care about money. He did, but it didn't occupy every moment of his time. Whereas his poor dad, the dad that he had that worked hard as a professor, he thought about money all the time because he never quite had enough. And you know, he kind of made a comparison, or I've heard a comparison. I don't know if it was Robert Kiyosaki that actually made this comparison or not, but the kind of comparison was that when you're in a room full of air and you've got lots of it, do you worry about whether there's going to be enough air to take your next breath? No, you never think twice about it. You just take another breath because there's plenty of air. And, you know, a fish in water doesn't know he's surrounded by water because that's just where he lives and everything's water, so it's no big deal. But if we all of a sudden were trapped in a room where it was sealed off tight and there was only enough air for 12 hours for all of us to breathe, it wouldn't be long and we'd all be looking at the other one that was and saying, hey, you know, you're breathing kind of heavy over there. You need to cut back, you know, or hey, don't do anything energetic because it's going to make you breathe harder and you're going to use up what oxygen you have. And we'd all be worried and concerned about taking that next breath and breathing shallow maybe instead of taking a deep breath. And, you know, so the same kind of thing occurs with money. If you've got plenty of money, then money is no longer a concern for you. It's like air. You just know it's there and you just use it as a tool. But if you don't have any, if you're over here trapped on this side of the quadrant and you're over here fighting over that 5% of the money, now all of a sudden every little penny counts. We got to worry about the price of gas. And when it goes up 10 cents, we're angry because those rotten scoundrels, how dare they raise the price of gas? I can't afford to get to work now. Or, the price of milk goes up, or the price of your clothes goes up, or, all of those things really concern you when you're fighting over that small 5% pie. And so consequently, what we want to do is try and help people. Helping other people excel is our business, but we want to help people get from the east side of the quadrant to the B side of the quadrant by giving you the information that you need to get to that other side, because ultimately it's just information. People over here think differently than we do on this side. I grew up in a factory working environment. My dad worked for Steelcase, and he worked hard and he was gone all the time. And much like Robert Kiyosaki's dad, I didn't get to spend much time with him. I didn't get to do anything with him. Occasionally we might take a weekend and go visit some relatives on the other side of the state, but we had to stay with the relatives, and we ate with the relatives, and then we'd come home and had to be home late Sunday night because Dad had to be to work Monday morning, and once in a rare while we'd get to take a vacation out to visit my dad's family out in Kansas, but that didn't happen every year. And again, we stayed with family and we ate with family, and we cut corners wherever we could, and on the way down we'd stop and visit family on the way so we'd have a place to spend the night. And all of those things affected our lives because we were on this side of the quadrant, we're on this employee side, and we were fighting over this little 5% pie. And that always left us short. It always left us anxious of whether we're going to put food in our bellies or gas in the gas tank, or pay the electric bill or pay the rent. And so all of these things were a factor. And so I like to call it being on the hamster wheel. And I've been there. I know how that feels. And so I really want to help people with that, and I want to help you with that. That's what our show is all about. We want to help other people excel, and you are those other people. I want to help you live the life you've always wanted. So what we got to do is learn new information. And Einstein, I believe it was, said that doing what we've always done is going to get what we always got. But his version was that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. We're never going to get different results if we keep doing what we've always done. If we want something different, we have to do something different. We have to learn to think different. We have to learn to think like these men over here, because it's their thinking is the only difference between there and here. How we think is going to get us from this side to that side if we're willing to change that. Now, that's kind of a difficult thing, and we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy trying to change that, because it means breaking old habits. It means making new habits. And the old habits are hard to break. And when we're tired and when we're weak or when we're upset, then we tend to revert back to the old way of thinking, how we used to think over here, instead of continuing on. So it takes some time to build new habits. But as we build new habits and we start to think successfully, and I talked about Earl Nightingale and his show on YouTube. He has a half-an-hour video of the strangest secret. I almost forgot there for a second. But if we go and look at that video and watch what he has to say there, listen to what he has to say there, it's really amazing that as we plant different seeds in our mind, then we'll get a different harvest, like planting in the field. If you plant corn instead of tomatoes, you'll get a nice harvest crop of corn. It not only is likely to happen, but it has to happen, because the field will only return what it is that we put in it. And our minds are the same way. What we put in our minds is going to return a different lifestyle for us. And so if we change what we plant in our minds, that lifestyle for us is going to change. And so my hope and my desire here is to help you learn new thinking, change the way you're thinking, encourage you to continue that process to create those new habits, and in doing so, give you hope for tomorrow, because I know what it's like to be where you're at. I've been there myself, and I didn't like it. I wasn't happy with the results. I wanted to be over here, and I found a way, and I'm so glad that I did. And so it's the desire of my heart, it's my goal to help as many of you otherwise that I can to get from this side of the quadrant to that side of the quadrant. And so what we've got to do is change our thinking. And we kind of talked a little bit last week about that recipe for success. Dreaming is important because it becomes the seed that helps us to give us the motivation and desire to find out and create new habits. And then desire stems from the dreaming, and the belief that we can do it comes from that as well. And then we got to couple it with some new knowledge. We got to learn some new things. And as we learn the new things, then we'll take on those new habits and we'll start to think differently and eventually gradually work our way to that side of the quadrant. And then knowledge is not enough, but we have to couple that with action. We have to do something different. If you want something different, you have to do something different. And then the most important part of all is attitude. Attitude makes a difference. And you know, you've heard it said that attitude is everything. But we need a combination of all those things. That's our recipe for success. That's our recipe that's going to help us get from this side of the quadrant that Robert Kiyosaki was talking about to that side. And so we so much want to help you with that. I had a little story I ran across today earlier that I was going to share with you, but I'm running out of time. Oh, maybe I can get to it. But it talks about perspective and how just seeing things from a different light can make a huge difference in what we see. There's a little saying that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will change. And so if you want to start the change in your life, you need to change your own perspective. You have to improve the way you look at things and start looking at things from a more positive light. And so this little story kind of bears that out. And it's about the Taylor family, and they were really proud of their heritage. They have a nice family tree. Their forefathers came over on the Mayflower, and many of their ancestors were politicians or successful businessmen or movie stars or something like that. And so they were really proud of their family, and they wanted to make up a booklet of their family history and put it all in there. So they hired a technical writer and a historian and a researcher to research the family tree. They only had one little problem, and that little problem was dear old Uncle George, who had been executed by the electric chair. And boy, you know, they were in a quandary of how they were going to make this book. Should we leave out Uncle George, or what should we do? And so the writer, she finally said, well, you know, we can probably work with that, and I'll go ahead and fix it up so that Uncle George doesn't look quite so bad. And so the book was made and published, and when it came out, it talked about dear old Uncle George and how he was part of a, I forgot how it went now. Don't you hate when that happens? That he had been a chair of a electrical organization, and that it was tied to an important government agency and institution, and that his death was a shock, a sudden shock, and how he will be so sorely missed. But you know, when you reframe that everything, and when you reword it, when you relook at it from a different perspective, then things don't look so bad. And your life can be the same way. You can take some of the ugliest things in your life and just reframe them and change the way you look at things, and all of that will change for you. And changing that perspective is what's going to help you get to that other side of the quadrant. Well, we're running out of time now, and I'm sure I've enjoyed the little bit of time we've had to spend with you this day. And we hope that you've gained something from what we've had to say to you. I hope it's been a blessing and a ministry to your heart, and continue to do so. Look for us again next time. And of course, if you want to drop us a line and tell us how you've appreciated what we've had to say, that would be great. I'll put the phone number on our screen here. And I always end my show with a quote from Christopher Robin, talking to Winnie the Pooh. And he said to Winnie, he said, "There's something you must always remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." And I want to leave that thought with you today, because all of those things apply to you. So tune in again next week.